Hey guys, tonight we're taking a little detour from the familiar. You're not curling up under soft blankets or drifting off to the hum of your air conditioner. No, tonight you've been accidentally time warped into the heart of the Roman Empire. Not the postcard version with marble pillars and glistening fountains. No, you're smack in the middle of the real thing. And, well, it's a bit rougher around the edges than you were hoping. The Forum smells like wet iron and goat sweat. The cobblestones jab at your soles like judgmental thumbs, and you're already being stared at like an exotic bird. Oh, and spoiler alert, you probably won't survive the next 24 hours. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is. I love seeing how far our little bedtime journeys travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up on cold stone, no memory of how you got here, just the sharp stink of smoke and sweat invading your nose. You open your eyes to a blanket of stars above, not the soft glow of a ceiling fixture, and definitely not your room. A torch crackles nearby, and your first instinct is to reach for your phone. But your pockets are empty. You're lying on your side, sandaled feet brushing against your ribs. Sandals that aren't yours? And next to you, a man in a filthy tunic who mumbles something that sounds vaguely like Latin and rolls over, farting unapologetically. Welcome to the Forum of Rome around the 1st century A.D. You sit up trying to stay calm. Panic can wait. After all, maybe this is just a very weird lucid dream. But then a soldier barks at you from across the plaza. He's wearing a glinting helmet, armor straps clinking with each step, and holding a spear like it's an extension of his personality. He doesn't look like an actor. You're too stunned to speak as he eyes your jeans and t-shirt like you just walked out of a cult ritual. The look in his eyes says witchcraft, or maybe barbarian. You stand and start to wonder, half dazed, half hopeful, that someone might be able to explain what's happening. But everything's off. The smell, ye gods, the smell, the mix of sewage, animals, unwashed humans, and hot sun-baked stone is the first thing that really hits you. You walk past a vendor slathering something that might be olive oil onto a slab of bread, and you think maybe you've found something safe, until you get closer and realize it's fish sauce, fermented, ancient, and somehow worse than it sounds. Welcome to garum. Historians still argue whether garum was truly appetizing to the average Roman or just tolerated with grim endurance. But either way, it's here, and it's everywhere. You pass beneath a marble archway, its Latin inscription, now readable thanks to some mysterious dream logic fluency. SPQR, Senatus Populusque Romanus, the Senate and people of Rome. It looks regal. It also looks like graffiti with good PR. Your sneakers squelch in something unpleasant, and you look down to see that someone has emptied a chamber pot off a balcony above. Right on time, apparently. You dive aside with a yelp, which draws even more attention. Now, a group of locals is gawking at you, whispering behind clay mugs of sour-smelling wine. A teenager points at your jeans. You hear the word brachae, the Roman term for trousers, usually worn by barbarians from the north. Yeah, you're basically a walking scandal right now. And not in a cool influencer way, in a let's get the augurs to check for omens kind of way. You finally duck into a shadowed alcove to regroup. A goat wanders by. No leash, no owner, just living its best life. A woman balances a basket on her head, and you marvel at the sheer grace in her walk, until you notice the wide berth she gives you. You're not just strange. You're dangerous, mysterious, possibly cursed. And that's when the first wave of real panic hits. You realize you don't speak the dialect fluently, you don't know the rules, and your clothing is basically a walking billboard that screams, "Not from around here." You reach for anything familiar, but there's no phone, no wallet, no ID. Even your wristwatch is gone. The sun is your only clock now, and it's climbing fast. Maybe mid-morning? You wonder what happens if you just lie low, wait for this to pass. But that idea vanishes when you spot a man being dragged through the street in chains. His crime, stealing bread, or looking at someone wrong. The shouts are unclear, but the punishment is not. The guards spit on him as they haul him away. You swallow hard. And here's the kicker. Unless you find food, shelter, and some kind of social cover soon, you could be next. Because in ancient Rome, just existing without a place in the system means you're suspicious. And suspicious people, they vanish. Quickly, quietly. Sometimes not so quietly. You duck behind a pillar, heart pounding. Maybe this isn't a dream. Maybe this is a test, or a glitch in the simulation, or just one long, weird cosmic joke. Somewhere nearby, a public crier is reading off announcements, births, deaths, lost pigs, gladiator schedules. It's surreal. And still, the forum bustles. Bakers peddling loaves, philosophers arguing under porticos, children chasing one another with sticks, and all of it completely oblivious to the modern outsider, now sweating profusely by a statue of a forgotten god. You hear temple bells in the distance. Worship is beginning. A priestess in flowing robes lights incense with a flint, her movements practiced, sacred. The smoke curls toward you, and for a brief second, you forget the terror. It's beautiful, ancient, sacred, but only for a moment. Then a man nearby leans close and sniffs. "You smell like lavender and soap," he says, wrinkling his nose, and not in a complimentary way. "You're doomed." So you start walking. No destination, just a gut feeling that standing still is the worst possible choice. And it is. Because in Rome, idle people look like they're up to something. You move with fake purpose, weaving through tight alleys between crumbling stone walls, the sun now high and sharp. Your shirt is already clinging with sweat. The air is thick with smoke, heat, and the occasional clatter of hooves on cobblestone. A mule trots past, pulling a cart of cabbages. You sidestep it and nearly trip into a man's cell, and is that a bucket of eels? Yes, it is. They squirm as he pokes one with a stick and shouts out something about freshness. You nod politely and shuffle away. Rome has no chill. You need a plan. Food, water, a place to blend in. You figure maybe the baths. They're public, right? Communal. And if there's one thing Romans love, it's bathing, almost obsessively so. You follow your nose, literally. Steam carries the smell of oil and warm stone toward you, and soon you see it. A massive brick complex with columns like tree trunks and statues of gods who look ready to judge your posture. The baths of Caracalla, or maybe Trajan. Historians still argue which was more impressive in its prime, but this one is jaw-dropping enough. And you're not even in line. You make your way toward the entrance following a group of men in togas who don't give you a second glance. You try to walk like them, chest up, relaxed arms, a casual arrogance, but your sneakers slap against the stone like some sad little drum solo. A guard eyes you. You hold your breath. He doesn't stop you. Inside, the temperature rises, not unpleasantly. It's moist, warm, and oddly calming. Marble benches line the walls. There's a room with cold plunges, another with heated pools, and one where steam clouds everything. You spot people rubbing oil onto each other, scraping it off with curved tools, strigils, and chatting like they're in a coffee shop. The strigils clink in metal bowls as the attendants clean them off, and you realize this is the Roman version of wellness culture. It's spa day meets social media. You blend as best you can. Try not to talk. Just nod. When someone raises an eyebrow at your clothes, you mime losing a bet. It sort of works, and for the first time all day, you breathe easy. The stone is smooth beneath your fingers, the water cool on your wrists. You kneel by a fountain and drink, gingerly at first, but the water is fresh, delicious even. Ancient Roman aqueducts were more advanced than you expected, a fact you remember from somewhere. They used lead pipes, which may have slowly poisoned the upper class. Historians still debate the long-term effects, but for now, you're just grateful not to die of thirst. You sit by the frigidarium, watching as a trio of older men argue loudly over a political scandal. One accuses another of bribing a senator with amphorae of Spanish wine. The other denies it and accuses him of seducing a Vestal virgin, which is a capital offense, by the way. You're learning all sorts of gossip, none of which you can use. But then a problem. You're asked to pay. A burly man in a tunic jabs a thumb toward a bronze plate with scribbled fees. You pretend not to understand. He doesn't care. You shrug, point at your pockets, mime being robbed. He narrows his eyes, and just like that, the illusion collapses. The guards are alerted. You hear a shout from behind. You run, not gracefully. You slip on the damp marble, crash into a bowl of olive oil, and nearly knock over a statue of Mercury. But adrenaline fuels you, and you bolt out the back entrance down a side street, past startled market-goers, and into the maze of Rome's underbelly. You duck into an alley and press yourself into the shadows. Your breath hitches. You smell like bath water and panic. The city muffles the sound of your pulse with street noise, vendors, animals, the occasional scream. It's organized chaos out here, and you, a broke, smelly outsider with no documents, are just a liability waiting to be scooped up. A child sees you and giggles. She holds out a fig. You blink. She's barefoot, wearing a tunic that's more patch than cloth, and she grins like you're the most interesting thing she's seen all week. You accept the fig with a nod. It's warm, soft, sweet, a gift. Maybe you're not entirely doomed, but then she says a word you don't understand, then another. You try to respond, but she frowns and backs away slowly, then disappears around a corner. Minutes later, 2 adult men show up, one with a club. You run again. Because, of course you do, this time, deeper into the city. You dodge wagons, leap over puddles, and finally collapse in a dark, smoke-filled tavern where a bard is plucking a lyre and singing something vaguely mournful. You slump into a seat and pray no one notices. Someone does. An older man, gaunt and grizzled, slides into the bench across from you. He squints, smells the air, points to your shirt. You brace. Then he speaks, in perfect Latin. "You're not from here, are you?" You freeze. He leans in. "I've seen others like you before. Not many, but enough." Your mouth goes dry. You want to ask 1,000 questions. But before you can speak, he chuckles. Keep moving, don't stop. And whatever you do, don't let them see your teeth when you smile. Then he vanishes into the crowd. You sit, stunned, unsure if that was real or the onset of dehydration-induced hallucination. Either way, it's another problem on the pile. You glance down at your reflection in a cracked bowl of wine. You look exhausted, wild, alien. Rome is not built for you. It doesn't care about you. And you are one small mistake away from becoming a nameless figure on a magistrate's scroll. Your stomach growls. You're still hungry, still tired, still lost. And this day, it's far from over. You wander through the smoky haze of the tavern, trying not to think too hard about what the old man said. Don't let them see your teeth when you smile. What does that even mean? Was it a metaphor, a warning, a reference to dental hygiene? You remember that Roman toothpaste allegedly included crushed bones and oyster shells. Not exactly minty fresh. Still, you're grateful he didn't report you, which makes him one of the few people today who haven't tried to extort, chase, or club you. That puts him firmly in the category of new best friend, even if he's now vanished like a ghost. Outside again. The sun is starting to dip behind the rooftops, turning the sky a dusty orange. Shadows stretch long across the Forum as you emerge from the alleyways and find yourself smack in the heart of Rome's civic madness. The Forum is like downtown Manhattan. Met a Renaissance painting, then took a deep breath of incense and sweat. It's beautiful and chaotic, grand and grimy. Columns soar skyward, framing vast open spaces where senators in white togas pontificate about the latest grain shipment from Egypt. Marble statues glare down at the crowds, their carved eyes eternally judging. A few pigeons deface them anyway. You try not to attract attention. You fail, because you're still dressed all wrong. Your clothes are alien, your shoes absurd, and your wide-eyed stares betray you. A vendor waves a roasted dormouse on a skewer under your nose and mutters something that sounds suspiciously like a sales pitch. You shake your head. He glares and mutters again. You quicken your pace. And then you hear it, the unmistakable metallic clank of soldiers. You press into a crowd of women arguing over the price of olives, trying to blend. The soldiers march by in gleaming armor, faces stern, sandals stomping in unison. Their uniforms are terrifyingly efficient, segmented metal plates across their torsos, short swords on their hips, red-crested helmets. They move like a machine. You hold your breath. A little-known fact bubbles up from your high school memory bank. Roman soldiers weren't all Romans. Many were non-citizens serving for years just to earn their citizenship. And they were disciplined, brutally so. Punishments for desertion or cowardice included being beaten to death by fellow soldiers. They called it decimation, where every 10th man was executed to keep the others in line. Historians still argue whether the practice was widespread or just a terrifying rumor. Either way, you're not going to test their mercy. The soldiers pass, you exhale, the olive women go back to haggling. You need to hide in plain sight. So you do the one thing nobody expects. You volunteer for work. A loud man with a clipboard, okay, it's a wooden tablet covered in wax, is barking at a group of laborers next to a stack of bricks. You pantomime lifting things. He raises an eyebrow. You flex. He snorts, then shrugs and motions you to follow. Just like that, you're part of a crew hauling supplies across the construction site of some soon-to-be temple. The bricks are heavy. The dust is relentless. Your hands blister. Your hands blister within minutes, and the tunic they throw over your clothes itches like it's woven from regret. But you're invisible now, just another laborer in a sea of sweaty nobodies. And oddly enough, the rhythm of lifting, stacking, and grunting with the others has a strange comfort to it. You catch glimpses of everyday life. A child running past with a pet monkey. A woman scolding a man for bringing the wrong kind of bread. Two men arguing about whether Cicero was better before or after exile. You also learn that Roman concrete is nothing short of magical. Stronger than anything modern until very recently, it could set underwater and lasted for millennia. There's even a fringe theory that ancient Roman builders had a secret additive, volcanic ash from Pozzuoli, that made it so durable. Historians still debate exactly how they mixed it. You just try not to drop it on your foot. By sundown, your body is screaming. Every muscle aches. Your mouth is dry again. The foreman tosses you a piece of flatbread and a handful of something vaguely nut-like. You chew. It tastes like despair and grit. But it's calories. Night in Rome comes on fast. Oil lamps flicker to life. Shadows stretch and multiply. The temperature dips just enough to remind you that you don't have a bed, a roof, or a plan. You slip away from the site and into a nearby plaza, where a group of men are gathered around a fire. They look rough, scarred, possibly thieves. You sit nearby, not with them, just near enough to catch warmth and not look too alone. One of them tosses a bone at your feet. You nod thanks. He shrugs, and that's your in. Over the fire, they talk about the Colosseum, tomorrow's games. Someone brags about a new gladiator who supposedly fought off 2 lions and a bear with nothing but a spear. Another laughs and says the animals are half-starved and drugged. They bet money anyway. You try not to look horrified. Gladiator games are entertainment here, like the NFL meets a horror show. Then comes the story. One of the older men leans in, voice low. They say one of the beasts tomorrow is no beast at all. The others scoff. He insists, says it's some kind of man-beast, a criminal punished with drugs and fire turned into something monstrous. They argue. One says it's a myth. Another says he's seen the creature's cage himself. You remain silent, listening, because whether it's myth, madness, or metaphor, you're starting to realize Rome is more than marble and order. It has shadows, strange ones. You curl up nearby, head on your arm, and try to sleep. But your mind races. You wonder how you'll make it to morning, whether the old man was real, whether the guards are still looking, whether you're part of some grand historical joke, because so far, you definitely wouldn't last a day. The sky shifts from charcoal to a cold slate gray as dawn creeps in, and your neck, which has been resting on a piece of stone that could have doubled as a murder weapon, aches in a dozen places. You wake up stiff, itchy, and more than a little paranoid. The men around the fire have already gone, leaving behind ashes, bones, and a vaguely warm patch of dirt that smells like fermented sweat and regret. Your stomach reminds you that yesterday's handful of crust and ancient granola isn't enough to sustain a time traveler. But food isn't the only thing gnawing at you. There's a pulse behind your eyes, a kind of overstimulation hangover from the sensory assault Rome delivers at every hour. You stretch, which is a mistake, because your entire back spasms like it's auditioning for a tragic play. Welcome to Roman labor. Still, you're alive. So far, barely. You shuffle toward the edge of the forum again, trying to blend into the morning shuffle. Merchants set up shop under striped awnings. Slaves sweep the marble steps of temples. You pass a man furiously whispering to a statue of Jupiter while stuffing herbs into a leather pouch. Rome is nothing if not inclusive. Official religion alongside astrology, mystery cults, and kitchen gods. One fringe belief involves placing cursed tablets in tombs to hex your enemies. You consider writing one about whoever invented Roman public toilets, because, yes, you finally need to use one. You follow the smell, a mistake, and locate a row of latrinae, Rome's public restrooms. Picture a long bench with holes cut out, no dividers, no privacy, and a flowing water trough underneath. People chat while doing their business like it's a casual dinner party. A sponge on a stick, soaking in communal vinegar water, is the shared toilet paper. You stare at it. It stares back. And in that moment, you understand why future civilizations build stalls. You do what you must. On the way out, you nearly collide with a group of teenagers laughing and tossing what look like dice. Except they're not playing a game. They're casting astragali, knuckle bones used for both gambling and divination. One of them, a wiry kid with a mischievous grin, says something too fast for you to catch, then shouts again louder. You shake your head and shrug. He mimics your gesture, then flips you the Roman equivalent of the bird, the digitus imputicus. Ah, yes, ancient history comes alive. You walk quickly, no point engaging with a pack of juvenile delinquents who probably moonlight as pickpockets. You duck into a side street, narrower than a corridor, and emerge into a small marketplace that feels less curated for tourists, if Rome had tourists, than lived in. Fish glisten on slanted tables. Chickens cluck nervously in woven cages. An old woman offers you a fig. You take it. She slaps your hand. Not free. You mime hunger. She eyes you with a mix of pity and suspicion, then tosses you the fruit with a grunt. It tastes like heaven, heaven wrapped in dirt. But still, you thank her. She doesn't understand the words, but nods anyway. You follow the edge of the street until it spills into a massive public bath complex. And oh, the thermae, Rome's greatest social invention. Bathhouses weren't just for washing. They were gyms, spas, libraries, gossip hubs, and networking hotspots. Senators and slaves alike stripped down and soaked in various pools. The caldarium, hot, tepidarium, warm, and frigidarium, cold enough to murder your spirit. Entry was cheap. The rules were relaxed. Even food and massages were available if you had the coin. You, of course, do not. But you do have grime and sore muscles. So when a distracted porter opens the gate for a group of actual paying citizens, you slip in behind them like a particularly dusty shadow. Inside, it's humid and loud. Steam billows from every direction. Naked bodies of every shape and status stroll around without shame, and you suddenly realize you're very overdressed. A man slaps your back and laughs. You laugh too. That's your survival strategy now. Confused but friendly. You soak, you sweat, you nearly fall asleep in the warm pool until someone points at your shoes, modern rubber soles. You forgot to take them off. The man frowns. You freeze. A young woman beside him squints and says something slowly. You don't understand, but it ends in barbarous, not a compliment. A few more heads turn. You gather your things, read, a stolen towel and your wits, and casually bolt. Outside again, damp and now freezing. You've seen the best and worst of Roman hygiene in under 2 hours. One step closer to understanding this bizarre civilization. Wandering again, You pass a school where boys are chanting in Latin, reciting laws and poetry. No girls. Roman education was a boys-only club, unless you were extremely rich. You lean against the wall, listening. A teacher swats a student with a stick. Corporal punishment is the preferred learning method, apparently. Then a boy recites something familiar, a bit of Virgil. Arma virumque cano. I sing of arms and the man. You remember reading that in school. You whisper it quietly, mimicking the student. One of them notices, points, asks where you learned that. You panic and say, Alexandria. It's a safe bet. Educated city. Vaguely mysterious. The boy nods, impressed. The teacher squints at you, but you're already walking. Everywhere you turn, Rome pulses with life, law, and danger. You hear a crier announcing a trial, public hearings for crimes like theft, blasphemy, or even treason. Trials could be held in open-air courts. Sometimes the public would hiss or cheer. Justice wasn't always blind. Sometimes it wore a toga and took bribes. You drift toward the sound, find a crowd circling a man in chains. His accuser shouts that he defiled a shrine. The crowd jeers. A magistrate in a red-striped toga listens with cold eyes. No lawyers, just rhetoric. The accused pleads, gesturing wildly. Someone throws a cabbage. You don't stay for the verdict. It's barely midday. And already, Rome has offered you its wonders and its threats. Public baths and public toilets. Concrete miracles and sponge-on-a-stick horrors. Philosophers and pickpockets. Your head spins, but hey, at least you've learned the unspoken rule of the ancient world. Always, always watch your sandals. You wander from the raucous trial scene with a kind of exhausted awe, ducking beneath drying laundry strung between tenement buildings that lean a little too close together for comfort. These are the insulae, Rome's high-rise apartments, built high and fast to accommodate the city's exploding population. They're constructed from wood and mud brick, which means they're roughly as stable as a game of Jenga played by a drunk centurion. Fire is a constant threat. Collapse is a close second. And yet, people live here, crammed in like olives in a jar. You crane your neck and count at least 6 floors. A bucket dangles from a top window, lowered by rope, and you watch a fishmonger below drop in a wriggling catch. It's the ancient Roman version of home delivery, minus the tracking number. The deeper you go into this neighborhood, the clearer it becomes. You're far from the grandeur of temples and marble forums. This is where the poor and working class grind through life. Bakers, coopers, prostitutes, and dock hands. Children play in the dust, shrieking with joy. A man with a blackened eye hawks cured meats. Somewhere, someone is loudly arguing about goats. And then there's shouting. Urgent, angry. You whip around to see a crowd forming near a stall where a man is being accused of short-weighting his bread. Roman grain laws are strict. There are legal standards for how much a loaf must weigh. Cheat your customers and you risk public punishment, sometimes flogging, sometimes exile, sometimes worse. The crowd grows. The accused protests. A guard approaches, and you decide you've seen enough bread-based drama for one lifetime. You head toward the Tiber River, Rome's muddy lifeline. You're hoping for a moment of peace, but the banks are lined with activity. Barges unload goods from across the empire, wine from Gaul, papyrus from Egypt, olive oil from Hispania. It's easy to forget that Rome isn't just a city, it's the capital of a world-spanning machine. Everything flows here, literally, including you, apparently. You follow a dock worker for a while, hoping to look useful. maybe blend in. He notices you, offers you a coil of rope with a raised eyebrow. You nod solemnly and take it. Big mistake. The next half hour is a crash course in Roman manual labor. You haul, you stack, you slip on a patch of spilled garum, Rome's infamous fermented fish sauce, and nearly face-plant into a crate of amphorae. The dock workers laugh. One pats you on the back so hard you nearly swallow your tongue. You join in the laughter because what else can you do? At least now you smell like everyone else. Sweat, oil, and vague despair. A moment of kindness appears in the form of a woman selling honey cakes nearby. You're starving, you point. She frowns at your lack of coin, then eyes the rope in your hand. She shrugs and takes it in trade. You get the cake. It's the best thing you've eaten since arriving, a golden, sticky bite of heaven. You savor it like a man tasting sunlight. You sit for a moment on the river's edge, watching ducks glide by as a barge struggles upstream. It's peaceful, quiet, almost enough to forget where and when you are. But then a horn sounds in the distance. It's not musical, it's military. You glance up and spot them, a unit of Roman legionaries marching down the street in perfect formation, red tunics, metal armor, boots that clink with every step. Their expressions are carved from granite. You instinctively stand. Everyone does. Roman soldiers are respected, feared, and often resented, depending on how close you are to their fists. One of them breaks rank and points at a man across the street. A deserter, maybe, or someone avoiding conscription. You don't stick around to find out. You slink into an alley, grateful again that your modern clothes don't scream draftable citizen. Still, you wonder, what if you had been born here? As a Roman male, you'd be legally obligated to serve, starting young, usually 20 years. Imagine that, 2 decades in boots, marching across continents, possibly dying in a swamp in Britannia, for reasons you'll never fully grasp. Historians still argue whether the average legionary felt genuine patriotism or just hoped to survive long enough for land and retirement. You guess it depends on the province. You drift back toward the heart of the city, where a new buzz is forming. Something's happening near the Circus Maximus, Rome's massive chariot racing stadium. You follow the noise, people flood the streets, vendors shout, children chase each other with flags. It feels like game day because it is. The chariot races are one of Rome's most popular entertainments. Think NASCAR, but with knives, horses, and catastrophic injury. 4 main teams dominate: reds, blues, greens, and whites. Fans are viciously loyal. Riots have started over these colors. Entire careers have been made or destroyed in a single lap. You can't get inside the stadium, it's too packed, and you're definitely not wearing race day gear, but you find a nearby tavern where the races are being discussed with operatic fervor. Patrons shout over mugs of watered-down wine. Bets are made, coins exchanged. One man slams his fist on the table, declaring the Greens will triumph because their lead driver, Scorpus, is clearly divinely favored. Another scoffs, saying the Blues bribed the track attendants. You pretend to agree with both. It's safer that way. Someone hands you a drink. You take it. It tastes like vinegar had a midlife crisis and tried to reinvent itself as wine. Still, it's warm, and you haven't had anything to drink since that suspicious bath water. You sip carefully. The races begin, audible even from this distance. A roar from the crowd. You imagine the dust, the danger, the drivers standing in tiny chariots as horses thunder around the track. Crashes are common. Death is likely. The crowd loves it. This is Rome's hunger for spectacle, for chaos wrapped in ritual. You sit with strangers, cheering for drivers you've never seen in a city that keeps trying to kill you softly, with bread, baths, or broken amphorae. The sun begins to dip. Shadows stretch long and thin like spider legs across cobbled streets. The city shifts into evening mode. Lamps lit with olive oil flicker to life. Musicians begin to play at corners. Somewhere, a woman sings. Her voice threads through the air like incense. You breathe in and out. You've survived another day. Sort of. You wake up cold. Not forgot a blanket cold, more like slept on stone with rats judging you from the shadows. Cold. The Roman night is not gentle, and sleeping arrangements for the poor, or the lost time traveler in your case, are less than ideal. You curled up behind a crumbling column near the Forum, hoping the constant foot traffic would keep bigger threats at bay. It worked, kind of. You're alive, but your back sounds like a bag of walnuts when you stretch. The city stirs early. Dawn light creeps in golden slivers between buildings, and Rome yawns awake with the sounds of clanging pans, braying donkeys, and swearing bakers already elbow-deep in dough. You rise slowly, brushing dust and questions off your clothes. One more day. Your stomach complains, loudly. The honey cake from yesterday is a distant memory, and your body demands compensation. You follow your nose toward a food stall, nestled near a temple, one of the smaller ones, dedicated to some obscure deity whose name you can't pronounce and whose statue looks like it might scold you for jaywalking. The vendor is already busy, frying chickpea patties in oil. It smells heavenly. You look around for anything to trade. No rope this time, just lint and anxiety. The vendor squints at you, notices your disheveled look, and sighs. He drops a patty into your hand anyway, muttering something about pity and the gods. You bow dramatically. He rolls his eyes but smiles. As you eat, blissfully, 2 priests walk past, their white robes pristine, their hands full of sacrificial offerings, flowers, fruit, a tiny terrified goat. Religious ritual in Rome isn't optional. It's woven into everything. From military campaigns to housewarmings, divine favor must be sought. Not for salvation, mind you. The Romans don't care about eternal reward. They care about Pax Deorum, the peace of the gods. Keep the divine happy, and your city might not burn down this week. You follow the priests discreetly, drawn by the rhythmic chanting and growing crowd. They head to the temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus, perched proudly on the Capitoline Hill. It's the beating heart of Roman state religion. What happens here isn't just for show. It's a declaration of divine partnership. Rome and Jupiter, side by side, ruling the world. You slip into the back of the crowd as the ceremony begins. Incense clouds the air. A priest raises his hands. The goat bleats, then goes silent, quick, clean. Blood spills onto the altar, and you watch people around you nod with satisfaction. The sacrifice was accepted. The omens, it seems, are favorable. Historians still argue whether these rituals were taken literally or simply performed out of tradition. Some Romans believed fervently. Others just hoped the gods weren't listening too closely. You stand quietly, pretending reverence, wondering how you'd explain this to someone from the 21st century. Probably with hand puppets and nervous laughter. From the temple, your path winds downward toward the Forum once again. It's busier now, teeming, And today, something special is happening, a triumph. You didn't expect this, but fortune, or fate, wants you to see Rome at its most theatrical. A triumph is no ordinary parade. It's a full-blown victory celebration granted by the Senate to a general who's achieved something truly impressive, usually involving a lot of dead foreigners and territory gains. The general gets to dress like Jupiter himself, purple robes, gold laurel crown, and ride in a chariot through the city, while the spoils of war, prisoners, and soldiers follow in a carefully choreographed display of power. The crowd crushes in from all sides. You can barely breathe, but the excitement is infectious. Flowers rain down, trumpets blare, and then you see him, the general. He stands tall in his chariot, grinning, waving like he invented war. Behind him, a line of chained captives shuffle miserably. Exotic animals, lions, maybe a rhino, grunt and snap. Soldiers chant slogans, banners wave. It's all designed to show Rome's might. And yet, behind the general, a slave stands whispering in his ear. A single phrase, over and over, memento mori. Remember, you are mortal. It's a sobering tradition meant to keep ego in check amid glory. A reminder that even the most celebrated man in Rome is just one infection away from becoming history. You feel the paradox throb in the air, grandeur and fragility, triumph and mortality. The parade winds past, and the crowd begins to break up, buzzing with leftover adrenaline and spilled wine. You drift alongside them, still tasting ash and incense, unsure how to process what you've just witnessed. Rome doesn't just celebrate itself, it consumes everything in its orbit, digests it, and turns it into theater. As you walk, you pass a group of children reenacting the procession, one wearing a cabbage leaf as a crown, another pretending to be a lion. Their laughter echoes down the alley like bells. Further along you stumble upon a statue of Janus, the two-faced god of beginnings and endings. One face looks to the future, the other to the past. Fitting, you think? In this city, time folds in on itself, the ancient and the immediate blur. You, the out-of-place observer, are both witness and ghost. You sit on a step, rubbing your aching feet, when a man with wild hair and ink-stained fingers plops down beside you. He's a scribe, you gather, from the wax tablet strapped to his belt. He starts talking fast about politics, theater, some philosophical debate involving Cicero and cheese. You nod along, catching maybe a third of it. He pauses. "You're not from here, are you?" You freeze, but he just laughs. "Don't worry, Rome is full of strange faces. It's what makes us great." Then he hands you a small scroll. "For luck," he says, and disappears into the crowd. You unroll it. It's blank. Typical Roman humor. You chuckle, despite yourself, and tuck it into your tunic. The sun is high now. Heat shimmers off rooftops. Somewhere in the distance, a water organ plays, barely audible over the hawkers and hammering. You stand, stretch your sore limbs, and keep moving, because in Rome, standing still is how you get trampled or taxed. By now, you've started to realize that Rome doesn't slow down, not for sunrise, not for sunset, and definitely not for someone who's still mentally stuck in the 21st century. The streets churn with energy, as if the very stones beneath your feet are vibrating with purpose. People move like they're late for something important, even if they're just heading to gossip at the bathhouse, which, by the way, is exactly where you're going next. You've caught enough stray whispers to know that the public baths are where half of Rome's drama unfolds. Not just a place to get clean, though after 2 days of ancient grime, you're desperate for that part. There are social clubs, workout centers, libraries, and rumor mills rolled into one steamy marble package. The most famous of these, the Baths of Caracalla, wouldn't be built for a while, but even the earlier versions are staggering in their scale. You arrive at the entrance to a modest but busy therme, unsure what to do with your hands, your face, your everything. A bath attendant eyes you suspiciously, but you mumble something about losing your tunic tag, classic Roman excuse, and somehow squeeze inside before he can protest. Immediately, the humidity hits you like a wet toga. The air is thick with steam, sweat, and the sharp tang of heated oils. You strip awkwardly because, yes, it's a communal experience, and slip into the routine by watching others. First, the apoditerium, the changing room, then the tepidarium, warm and inviting, then the caldarium, a hot, misty chamber that makes you feel like you've wandered into a dragon's mouth. Romans take bathing seriously. You notice men scrubbing themselves down with strigils, curved metal tools used to scrape off sweat and dirt, sometimes with a bit of olive oil for good measure. One guy next to you is so vigorous, it looks like he's trying to peel himself. Another lectures his friend about stoicism while elbowing him in the ribs. You sink into the heat and let your limbs float. For the first time since you arrived, your body sighs in relief. But this isn't a spa retreat, not entirely. The bathhouse is also a battlefield. Deals are struck, secrets whispered, lovers quarrel. A senator in one corner is berating a younger man about a lost shipment of grain, while across the room 2 merchants are laughing a little too loudly over wine that definitely wasn't meant for waterside sipping. Historians still argue whether bathhouses were truly egalitarian spaces or whether class distinctions were simply invisible under the steam. Today, it feels like a mix. Rich and poor share the same waters, but the former always seem to speak louder and sprawl wider. As you move from one chamber to the next, you catch snippets of everything: political plots, off-color jokes about the emperor's latest statue commission, even one woman bragging about her lover's prowess like she's describing a new chariot model. You can't help but smile. It's oddly comforting. Humanity, it seems, hasn't changed much. Then you notice something peculiar, a mural stretching across the curved ceiling of the frigidarium, the cold plunge room. It shows Neptune riding dolphins, of course, but in the corner is a tiny painted octopus, wearing what looks suspiciously like a laurel wreath. Someone snuck in a joke, maybe a nod to Rome's aquatic conquests, or just a bored artist's rebellion. Your plunge into the frigidarium is more like a seizure. The cold bites instantly, and you yelp, drawing stares. You laugh it off with a refreshing, eh? Nod to the nearest guy, who blinks at you like you've grown a second head. After the bath, you wander through the attached palaestra, the exercise yard. It's full of half-naked men grunting, wrestling, and hurling weighted balls at each other like they've got gladiator dreams and poor depth perception. You sidestep a flying discus and find a quieter corner where older men are arguing over poetry. One of them is reciting Virgil, badly. You whisper the correct line under your breath, and the man swivels. "You know your verses," he says, eyes narrowing. You shrug, trying to look humble and not time-traveled. "My teacher was obsessed," he laughs. Then your teacher had taste. Come, sit. Let's debate whether Aeneas was a coward or a saint. You sit, mostly to catch your breath, but also because, weirdly, this feels like something you do back home at a bookstore cafe, only with more loincloths and fewer lattes. As the debate winds down, someone passes around honeyed dates and spiced nuts. You snack cautiously, not sure if your stomach is ready for ancient gastronomy. It is. Your taste buds throw a small parade. Eventually, the sun starts to drop, and shadows stretch like cats across the tiles. You thank your new acquaintances and step back into the Roman streets, skin flushed and clean for the first time since arriving. And weirdly, something inside you has shifted. You're no longer just surviving Rome. You're starting to understand it, not in the textbook way, in the lived-in, dirt-under-your-nails way. You pass a pair of street performers juggling clay pots, and one shouts, "Careful, outlander!" as a pot nearly crashes at your feet. You wave and grin, and he throws you a wink. He knows. They all seem to know. You don't belong here, but you're trying. You catch your reflection in a bronze shield hung outside a smithy. You look, well, not Roman, but no longer lost. There's noise ahead. More people. Another gathering. Rome is an endless festival of stories, and you, accidental time traveler, bathhouse philosopher, snack thief, are now part of it. And you're not going anywhere just yet. Nightfall in the Roman Empire does not bring silence. It brings a shift. The sharp clangs and shouted barters of the daytime marketplace soften into murmurs, into music, into the echo of sandals against mosaic floors and cobblestones. You think maybe you'll get some rest now. Maybe find a quiet corner, wrap yourself in borrowed cloth, and pretend just for a moment that this isn't all completely insane. But Rome has other plans. You're hungry again. Not the nibbling on dates at the bathhouse kind of hungry, but a deep, churning sort of hunger. The kind that reminds you you're far from modern food delivery apps. You follow your nose, literally, down a side alley where the smells are richer, smokier. Roasted meats, charred onions, the sharp sweetness of wine reduced over fire. You find a popina, one of Rome's many taverns. It's small, smoky, and dimly lit with flickering oil lamps. But it's alive. A group of workers shouts over a game of dice in one corner, while a woman with coal-lined eyes sings off-key by the fire, accompanied by a man plucking something that looks vaguely like a lyre but sounds like a musical fishnet. You step inside and immediately feel 100 eyes graze over you. You don't belong here, but you're interesting. That gives you a bit of leverage. You nod casually to the innkeeper, slap a bronze coin on the counter that you stole or found earlier, and ask for whatever's hot and won't kill you. You're served a bowl of poles, a barley porridge that smells better than it looks, and a slab of grilled meat that may or may not have bark on it. You eat anyway, and it's actually good. Salty, spiced, a bit chewy. You even brave a sip of the sour wine cut with water. It tastes like grapes that held a grudge. A man sits next to you, grizzled, scarred, eyes like slits of granite. "You'll run away?" he asks, without looking at you. You freeze. He turns to you slowly. "Relax. I don't care. I just don't want to drink next to a thief unless he shares the story." So you make one up. Something about escaping a cruel merchant master in Gaul, long nights on foot, a dream of starting over in Rome. He nods solemnly and claps your shoulder. Good. Rome eats the weak, but she pays the bold. Turns out he's a former soldier, Fought in Germania, he says, and now he's back to die drunk and unimportant. But maybe I'll marry a wine seller's daughter, he adds with a wink, and leave behind 5 loud kids who hate the empire. You talk. He shares fragments of war stories, some that contradict known history, and others that are so specific they must be true. He says he once saw a druid in Britannia called Lightning to his hand. Historians still argue whether those priests had real powers or just clever tricks, he mutters, draining his cup. A fight breaks out at the back. Not an unusual one. Just a lot of swearing, a toppled table, someone shouting about a stolen chicken leg. No weapons, thankfully. The tavern owner shouts them down and tosses a ladle across the room. It hits the wall with a thud and ends the dispute. Efficient. A woman at the next table tells fortunes with small clay dice marked in red. She beckons you, and though every part of your 21st century mind says, scam, your ancient Roman instinct says, well, why not? She rolls them. Her brow furrows. You don't belong to this time, she says quietly. You walk like someone who knows what thunder is but fears no gods. Your eyes are too fast. You laugh nervously. She doesn't. But you're here, she continues, so something has pulled you. Or someone. You ask what she means, but she just smiles and offers a fig. Outside, the air has cooled. The streets shimmer faintly under a waxing moon, casting long, poetic shadows across walls where ivy claws like sleepy fingers. You realize you haven't seen a single clock since arriving. Time here is told by the sun, the sounds, the stomach, and yet somehow everything feels timed to perfection. You make your way to a communal sleeping area near the edge of the Subura district, Rome's notorious and cramped underbelly. It's loud. It smells like sweat and wine and old leather. You wedge yourself between 2 snoring strangers and curl up, using your rolled-up tunic as a pillow. A child nearby hums a lullaby. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howls, not a metaphorical one, a real wolf, maybe. You don't sleep? Not really. You drift. And in that drifting, something strange happens. You begin to feel Rome sinking into your skin. The language, the pace, the smoke, the cruelty, the beauty. You're not a tourist anymore. You're part of the city's breath. Dreams swirl, half memory, half magic. You see temples and fire, a woman in white with silver-painted lips, a market full of mirrors that reflect the future, a cracked statue that weeps blood, and a voice, your own, asking, when do I go back? But the dream doesn't answer. Instead, it offers you a riddle carved in marble. To stay is to learn. To leave is to forget. You wake to the sound of hooves and shouting, morning again, and Rome never stops. You wake with straw in your hair and someone's foot dangerously close to your face. The communal sleeping den has already begun to stir with the groans of another Roman dawn. There's no snooze button here, just a collective grunt from a dozen overworked bodies and the smell of someone trying to cook lentils over a recycled firepot. You stretch, which is a mistake. Every muscle reminds you that Roman sleeping arrangements were not designed with chiropractic health in mind. Your back feels like a collapsed aqueduct, and your neck pops like the joint of a rusted door. But you're up, and today you've decided to find real work. Because, sure, surviving Rome as a wanderer is one thing, but integrating, earning your bread, not just finding or stealing it, that's the real gauntlet. You've heard whispers in the tavern, laborers for hire gather near the forum early each morning. If you're lucky, a tradesman or merchant might offer you a day's work. So you follow the crowd of half-awake men and boys, shuffling like a Roman zombie brigade toward the open-air labor exchange. It's chaotic. Barkers shouting job offers, deals being made in gruff Latin, hands gesturing wildly. Some are chosen quickly, strong young lads for cart pulling or brick hauling. Others loiter, the old, the injured, the ones who smell like bad wine and worse luck. A man approaches you, broad shoulders, inked forearms, face like a retired gladiator. You look strong enough. Know how to swing a hammer? Of course, you lie, even though the last hammer you touched was probably part of a DIY IKEA desk. And so you are drafted, not into the military, not into politics or philosophy, but into the sacred, splinter-filled order of Roman construction. Turns out, Rome is always building. Temples, roads, bathhouses, aqueducts, more temples. The city is a mosaic, constantly rearranging its own pieces. You're led to a dusty lot near the Aventine Hill where a bath complex is being expanded. Your job? Carry clay bricks and buckets of volcanic ash used in opus cementitium Roman concrete. It's genius stuff. The reason their structures have outlived empires. You marvel at it even as your arms ache. And let's be clear, this is not a light workout. You're sweating within 10 minutes, grunting by 20, and seeing stars by the hour mark. The sun slices through your tunic like judgment, and the lime dust gets into your eyes, your nose, your soul. But you keep going, because quitting means no pay, no food, and possibly being mistaken for a vagrant again. Around midday, you sneak a moment's rest in the shadow of a wall in progress. A fellow worker sits beside you. He's missing 2 fingers and half a smile. Don't get attached to any body parts, he advises cheerfully. The scaffolding bites. He tells you about the art of Roman masonry, the techniques passed from father to son, the secret ratios for mixing concrete so it hardens underwater. He even lets you try laying a brick, and you place it crookedly. Still better than Domitius, he laughs, pointing at a sour-looking man scowling over his sandwich. As the afternoon wears on, you begin to notice something strange. Roman construction is efficient, shockingly so. Teams work in rhythm, like a kind of muscular symphony. Materials are hoisted by ingenious pulley systems. No wasted movement, no idle hands. Even stranger, a woman arrives, dressed not as a worker, but as a supervisor. She surveys the worksite, barking orders that are obeyed instantly. Historians still debate the extent of women's roles in trades, your inner documentary voice whispers. But clearly, some had pull. She catches you staring and smirks. First day? You nod. Keep your back straight, or don't. More openings tomorrow either way. You laugh, but she's already gone. By sunset, you've hauled the equivalent of a small villa in bricks. Your palms are raw, your legs jelly, your mind blank. But you did it. A full Roman workday. No arrests, no line attacks. You're paid with a small pouch of mixed coins, mostly bronze asses, a silver denarius or 2, and a weird square token stamped with a fish. Good at the bakery, someone explains. On the walk back toward the city's denser quarters, you marvel at how the work sites seem to shrink into the background of Rome itself. The noise, the dust, the tools, they're just another thread in the city's endless weave. You pass by a troupe of street performers, a juggler with flaming torches, a man balancing on a pole, a child reciting bawdy poems in a sing-song voice. People laugh, cheer, toss coins. Entertainment is everywhere. Some of it's so bizarre you wonder if anyone here works normal hours. A blind man plays a double pipe flute near a fountain. The tune is hypnotic. You linger. "You're new," he says without looking. You freeze. How can you tell? You walk like your mind's still in the future. You chuckle. "Maybe it is." "Careful," he whispers. "The city hears that." Later, back in the sleeping den, you count your coins like a dragon hoarding dignity. Not much, but enough for a real meal tomorrow, maybe even a bath. You're starting to understand the rhythm of the place, how it tests you before it rewards you. Just before sleep claims you, you think back to the way those bricks felt in your hand. Solid, heavy, purposeful. Rome demands a lot. But for one strange, exhausted moment, you feel like you earned your place. Then someone nearby lets out a snore so loud it rattles your molars. Welcome to Rome. The first light of dawn barely peeks over the tiled roofs, but the streets of Rome are already alive with the clamor of merchants, bakers, and street criers. You step outside, feeling the sticky heat of the city's morning air settle on your skin, mixed with the unmistakable smell of spilt wine, cooking fires, and, of course, the ever-present aroma of the Tiber River's less than pristine waters. If you thought surviving a day hauling bricks was tough, wait until you try to eat in Rome without getting sick. The markets are a chaos of colors and voices stretching out like veins feeding the city's insatiable appetite. Fishmongers shout their prices, juggling slippery catches still glinting with silver scales. Butchers display slabs of meat dripping with blood. Vendors hawk olives, dates, and strange cheeses you can't quite place. It's sensory overload, and the slightest wrong step might have you knee-deep in someone's garbage heap, or at a kind of rat-infested alley where the shadows seem to whisper ancient curses. You decide to try your luck with food, maybe a loaf of bread and some cheap olives. But even here, survival requires a little cunning. The baker's ovens are so hot they could roast a man alive, and the bread is dense enough to double as a weapon. You hear a quip from a nearby old man. Better to bite a crust than get bitten by a dog, and you realize that literal danger lurks behind many Roman smiles. One quirky detail catches your eye: a vendor selling what looks like spiced dormice. Yes, those tiny rodents, roasted and stuffed with pine nuts and herbs, considered a delicacy by the upper class. You grimace. Historians still argue whether this was a widespread practice or just a bizarre trend among the wealthy elite trying to outdo one another in gluttony. You spot a young boy darting between stalls, his hands quick as lightning, snatching a fig here, a coin purse there. You remember the warnings about pickpockets, who thrive in the dense crowd, their nimble fingers as dangerous as daggers. The boy catches your gaze and grins mischievously, daring you to catch him. You don't even try. As you settle near the forum's edge to eat your humble meal, you overhear two patricians discussing politics, their voices low but dripping with scorn. The Senate, the emperor's decrees, conspiracies swirling like smoke. Roman politics are a tangled web you'd rather avoid. Yet you can't help but eavesdrop. It's impossible not to, given how deeply power and survival intertwine here. Nearby, a group of slaves are washing clothes in a communal basin, their faces blank with exhaustion. One whispers to another about a recent uprising in a nearby province. Historians still debate whether such revolts were spontaneous or orchestrated by rival factions. But one thing's clear. Life for the enslaved in Rome is a precarious balancing act between endurance and despair. You finish your meal quickly and decide to explore further, curious about what secrets the city might reveal next. Rome is a city that never truly sleeps. Its heartbeat is constant, pulsing through every stone and shadow. You realize that surviving here isn't just about strength or cunning, it's about understanding the invisible rules woven into daily life, the rituals that keep the empire's vast machinery running. And as you step back into the throng, you feel the weight of those rules pressing down, reminding you that Rome's greatest power isn't its armies or its architecture, it's its people. And you? Well, you're just trying not to become another forgotten face in the crowd. Night falls like a velvet cloak over Rome, but the city's pulse doesn't slow. It merely changes tempo. The Forum, so bustling by day, empties and takes on a shadowy, almost mystical air. Lanterns flicker, casting long, dancing silhouettes against marble columns worn smooth by centuries of whispered secrets. You find yourself wandering toward the baths, the public thermae, hoping for a moment of relief from the grime and grind. Entering the baths is stepping into a world that's part sanctuary, part social arena. The warm steam rises in gentle waves, mixing with the faint scent of olive oil and a hint of something floral, perfume maybe, or incense from a nearby shrine. The noise is a mix of splashes, laughter, and murmured conversations in various tongues, Latin, Greek, and others you can't quite place. The baths are a great equalizer. Here, slaves and senators might find themselves rubbing shoulders, though social lines still exist. You strip down and step into the caldarium, the hot room, where the heat presses against your skin like a living thing. It's soothing and oppressive all at once. The bath attendants, muscular men with sharp eyes, move through the steam, scraping off dirt and sweat with metal scrapers called strigils. You feel the grime of your hard day peel away, replaced by a strange feeling of rebirth. But this isn't just about hygiene. It's a political theater. You overhear a senator boasting loudly about his latest triumph in the Senate, a poet reciting verses about Rome's glory, a merchant haggling over contracts. Historians still argue whether the baths were primarily places of leisure or subtle power plays. But one thing's certain. Knowing how to navigate this space could make or break your standing. Then, a curious moment. A fortune-teller's tent near the bath's entrance. A woman with a shawl draped over her head gestures you closer. She speaks of the gods' favor and the fates that bind men to their destinies. Superstition is rampant here, and many Romans take such reading seriously, despite, or perhaps because of, their unpredictable lives. After your bath, you're invited to a nearby tavern by a group of friendly soldiers. The tavern is loud, smoky, filled with the scent of roasted meats and cheap wine. Here, jokes fly as freely as the cups of Posca, a sour wine diluted with water, favored by the legionaries. You laugh at tales of centurions' blunders and gladiatorial mishaps, but you also listen carefully. These stories are laced with survival lessons. One soldier leans in and tells you about the infamous testudo formation, the tortoise shield wall that made Roman legions nearly invincible. You nod, fascinated, but he adds with a grin that in battle it was just as likely to get you crushed by your own comrades' shields. Historians still debate the true effectiveness of such tactics, but in the chaos of war, every advantage counted. The night deepens, and you stumble out of the tavern, tipsy but alive, the sounds of the city drifting around you like a lullaby. You realize that, despite its dangers and hardships, Rome has a strange, intoxicating rhythm, a blend of brutal reality and vibrant life. You walk back to the crowded sleeping den, your limbs heavy, but your mind buzzing. Tomorrow will be another day of challenge, of adapting, of trying to carve a small space in this sprawling empire. But for now, you close your eyes, wrapped in the cacophony of distant voices and the gentle hum of a city that never truly sleeps. The dawn brings no mercy. You wake in a cramped insula, a multi-story apartment block that swallows the pool whole. The air is thick with the smell of stale sweat, cooking fires, and the ever-present dust that settles like a fine film over everything. You carefully avoid stepping on the squirming bodies of children still asleep on the floor, proof that privacy is a luxury Rome's masses can't afford. Outside, the street is a chaos of noise and motion. Street vendors shout, ox carts rumble over uneven cobblestones, and the clatter of wooden sandals echoes through narrow alleys. You push through the crowd, reminded of that old saying, Rome wasn't built in a day, but surviving it feels like it might take every day of your life. As you move toward your daily work, you pass a group of street performers, a mime acting out a tragic tale, a juggler tossing fireballs. It's a brief flicker of entertainment, but don't let it fool you. For most, life here is a grind, not a show. Yet the Romans' appreciation for spectacle goes beyond mere amusement. The Colosseum's shadow looms nearby, a constant reminder that violence and entertainment are two sides of the same coin. You pause to consider the gladiators, those warriors forced to fight for survival, and crowd applause. Historians still argue whether gladiators were respected athletes or simply brutalized slaves. Either way, their existence reveals much about Roman society's paradox, a thirst for blood mixed with admiration for skill and courage. Your path takes you past a temple where priests chant in Latin, their voices rising in eerie harmony. You catch a glimpse of an ancient ritual, a sacrifice meant to appease gods whose favor could make or break your day. Religious devotion here isn't just personal faith, it's political and social currency. You remember reading about the Vestal Virgins, priestesses who tended the eternal flame and wielded surprising influence despite their vows of chastity. A quirky detail. These women had the power to pardon condemned prisoners simply by touching them, a loophole in Roman justice that historians still debate. Hungry again, you decide to visit a thermopolium, an ancient fast food stand where poor Romans grab quick meals. You pick up a bowl of thick lentil stew, but the food is lukewarm and gritty. Still, it's better than fasting. As you eat, you overhear gossip about the emperor's latest decree, a tax hike that's sending shudders through the lower classes. You realize that for all Rome's grandeur, you are a cog in a vast, grinding machine, one that demands your labor, your loyalty, and your silence. To survive here, you must navigate not just physical dangers, but the ever-shifting politics, social hierarchies, and rituals that define daily existence. The city's heartbeat thrums around you, relentless and unforgiving, and as the sun climbs higher, you steel yourself for the day ahead, knowing that surviving in Rome isn't just about strength. It's about cunning, endurance, and a dash of luck. You find yourself drawn toward the sprawling markets, places of color, noise, and an energy that seems almost electric despite the sweltering heat. The Macellum is a kaleidoscope of sights and smells, piles of fresh fish still glistening with seawater, mountains of olives, sacks of grain, and baskets overflowing with figs and dates. Merchants shout prices in a dozen languages, hawking wares to locals and travelers alike. It's a place where fortune can be made or lost in the blink of an eye. Among the bustle, you spot a curious vendor selling all manner of curiosities, perfumes, charms, and even crocodile dung. Yes, crocodile dung. The ancient Romans believed it was an effective sunscreen and contraceptive. You laugh quietly to yourself, imagining the results of that application. Historians still argue whether these remedies were ever truly effective or just hopeful superstition. But the market isn't just about trade. It's a melting pot of ideas and cultures. You overhear traders speaking Greek, Aramaic, and even some distant Celtic tongues. Rome, despite its iron grip, thrives on this diversity, drawing in influences from across the empire. The exchange isn't merely material, it's intellectual and spiritual as well. Suddenly, a commotion draws your attention. A group of philosophers debating loudly near a small square. Their voices rise and fall, echoing against stone walls. One argues that virtue is the path to true happiness. Another insists that fate controls all. It's a reminder that even in a city obsessed with power and conquest, questions about the meaning of life and morality remain hotly contested. Scholars still debate the exact nature of Stoicism's impact on daily Roman life, but its emphasis on resilience and inner peace clearly resonates. You decide to take a moment and sit by the Tiber River, watching as merchants unload goods from small boats. The water glints under the midday sun, shimmering like scattered jewels. Yet beneath its beauty lurks danger. Pollution and disease are common, and rumors persist of strange creatures lurking in the depths. One fringe tale even claims that a giant sea monster once terrorized the docks, though most dismiss it as drunken sailors' nonsense. As you sip a cool drink of Mulsum, wine sweetened with honey, you reflect on your place here. The empire is vast and unstoppable, yet every day is a delicate dance with survival. You realize that beneath the grandeur and sophistication, Rome is still a city where the unexpected lurks around every corner. You rise and step back into the market's fray, ready to face whatever strange, fascinating, and sometimes terrifying moments the day might throw your way. After all, this is Rome, the city that never quite stops surprising you. As evening approaches, you head toward the Forum again, the political and social heart of Rome. The grand marble buildings now glow softly in the fading light, their shadows stretching long across the cobbles. You can almost hear the ghosts of speeches past, debates that shaped history whispered among the stones. Walking here feels like treading on the pulse of an empire. You pause by the rostra, the speaker's platform where orators once stirred crowds to passion or fury. Tonight, it's quieter, but the echoes of Cicero's eloquence linger in the air. Historians still argue whether such speeches truly swayed the masses or merely entertained the elite, but the power of words in Rome is undeniable. Nearby, a street artist sketches caricatures on parchment, capturing the exaggerated features of passing senators and commoners alike. It's a reminder that satire and humor thrived even under the weight of empire. One playful jibe you overhear calls the emperor a pot-bellied lizard, a nickname that probably wouldn't earn you much favor in the palace. You make your way to a nearby shrine where a flickering flame burns in honor of Vesta, the goddess of hearth and home. The Vestal virgins, those mysterious priestesses sworn to chastity, maintained the flame day and night. Losing the fire was considered a dire omen, possibly portending the fall of Rome itself. A quirky fact. If a Vestal virgin broke her vow, she was buried alive, a punishment that strikes modern sensibilities as shockingly harsh. Historians still debate how much political power these women wielded behind their sacred duties. Suddenly, the distant roar of the Colosseum catches your attention. Tonight, a gladiatorial combat is underway, and the crowd's cheers ripple through the city like thunder. The spectacle is brutal, yet strangely mesmerizing, a testament to Rome's complicated relationship with violence. Some scholars argue these games were a form of social control, distracting the populace from political unrest. Others see them as a deeply ingrained cultural ritual celebrating valor and fate. You find a spot among the spectators, the air thick with sweat, dust, and anticipation. As the combatants enter the arena, their armor gleams under torchlight. You can't help but admire their courage, even as a chill runs down your spine. The fight begins, a clash of steel, skill, and willpower that will determine who lives to see another day. Amid the chaos, you remember the lessons of the baths, the markets, and the streets. In Rome, survival is never guaranteed, but it's the unyielding spirit of its people, their capacity for endurance and adaptation, that has built this sprawling empire. You realize that perhaps it's this spirit you must summon if you want to last even a day here. The night deepens, and the city begins to quiet, but your mind races with the relentless energy that defines Rome. You wander through dimly lit streets, past shadowy corners where whispers of conspiracies and secrets mingle with the cool night air. The city feels alive in a different way now, more intimate, more dangerous, and infinitely more mysterious. You recall the public latrines you passed earlier, communal and often unsanitary spaces where Romans shared not just waste, but gossip and political intrigue. Oddly, the Romans believed that sitting together in such places could strengthen social bonds, a quirky cultural detail that historians still debate as either practical or downright bizarre. The stench is something you quickly learn to ignore, much like the constant noise and dust. Ahead, the flicker of oil lamps guides you to a tavern where laughter and music spill into the street. You step inside, greeted by a haze of smoke and the clatter of cups. Here, away from the imposing monuments and official facades, the real Rome reveals itself in stories told over wine and shared meals. The patrons include soldiers, slaves, and merchants, each with their own tales of hardship and cunning. You listen to a grizzled veteran recount battles along the empire's borders, his voice rough but proud. Tales of barbarian tribes, relentless marches, and narrow escapes fill the room. You realize how fragile the empire's edges truly are, stretched thin by ambition and the constant need for expansion. Historians still argue about the real reasons for Rome's eventual fall, but the strain is undeniable even in its heyday. Outside, the city's iconic aqueducts stand silent against the night sky, marvels of engineering that bring life-giving water to millions. You imagine the countless laborers who toiled to build and maintain these structures, their sweat and blood literally flowing beneath the city's feet. The aqueducts symbolize Rome's greatness, but also its relentless demand on human lives. You finally make your way back to your cramped insula, exhausted but alive. The sounds of the city fade as you settle down, the distant howl of a street dog the last reminder that life here never truly sleeps. You think about everything you've seen, the grandeur and grime, the hope and horror, the gods and gladiators. So, would you last a day in the Roman Empire? Probably not without grit, wit, and a willingness to accept that the past was as brutal as it was beautiful. But maybe, just maybe, you'd find a way to carve out your own story amidst the chaos. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together.